Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Mr. Nassim Taleb.
Thank you. Thanks, all. Thank you very much.
So just to start off, Nassim, you actually have some prepared remarks. I'd love for you to kick it off, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Yes, I mean, it's not that they're not remarks, by the way. So hold on, let me. They're much less remarks than pictures I'm going to show. Anyway, so I just wrote a book called Skin in the Game, which is volume 5 of a collection called Inserto. And it takes a while to figure out what you're writing, what your subject is. You know vaguely the details, and then little by little, things start to sort of like mix together to provide a little more unity.
Coalesce.
So it took me a long time. And now I figured out what it was that I was writing about for the past 20 years. See, I started in life as a trader. I was a trader. Then I started doing that kind of stuff. See, so I didn't start like by doing theories and going to practice. And I noticed that when you start with practice and then start figuring out the theory, that about 90% of the theories you know are nonsense. And then some things are useful, but then that process of going from practice to theory is very different from the one that people have, usually going from theory, they study and then they apply, and of course they misapply. And then the other, so I became progressively I started retiring into this for also by doing mathematics of risk, mainly because of lack of other hobbies, I'll be honest, or incompetence in other hobbies. Like I'm not very competent at tennis, not competent at chess. I lose concentration, which annoys the person I'm playing with. So I have to spend my days doing this. So, and when doing this, I started discovering some stuff. The first thing I discovered is that without skin in the game, this is what happens to a profession. Skin in the game is really when you have something at risk in any situation. So you learn, and also it's the filtering. So I'm not going to talk about skin in the game, but one of its consequences. What is it that we don't quite get about probability and stuff like that? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is fat tails. Fat tails was a subject. Fat tails are not tails, fat tails for animals. That's, I'll describe it in a few minutes. What's the difference? It's sort of the subject of the black swan. By saying practically everything you study in statistics at school is useless for a domain I call the extreme stand. As a matter of fact, every single intuition you'll build at school will not work. And let's see how. Say I take randomly 2 people, and this is called the catastrophe principle. I take randomly 2 people from the population, so read randomly, and I measure them, and I have a very unlikely sample of a total height of 4.1. What's the most likely combination? 10 centimeters and 4 meters? Even in Canada, I don't say that. We see worse things in Canada, we heard, but not. Okay, what's it going to be? 150 and 260? No. 2 and 2. 205, 205. So in that domain called mediocre stand, if you have a bad year, it's not going to come from one bad day. It's got to come from 2 events. As unlikely, it's much more likely to have 2 times 3 sigma events than 1 time 6 sigma, or 2 times 5 sigma events than 1 time 10 sigma. And that pretty much, by definition, tells us what a Gaussian is, what that domain is, and that no extreme can really blow you up if you diversify. The portfolio theory is based on that. You're not going to have, if you have a hit, it's not one stock, it's a combination of stocks. If you have one mishap and not one combination of things, which is the 6 sigma idea. All of that fails because I'm going to give you, given that we have high net worth individuals, I think by now 36 million is not high net worth anymore, or something like that. I mean, with inflation, now it's time to get inflation.
But US, it's real money.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Okay, so U.S. Make it pound, euros, real pounds. All right. Although, in a few hours a pound will. So I take randomly 2 people from the population. And I happen to have a very weird sample that has a total wealth of 36 million. That's the most likely combination. 18 and 18? What is it? 35.8, even better. I tell you, if you take on a planet, 35.995, one has like $200 net worth and the other has the balance. So it tells us that in domains, like finance, if you're going to have a hit, it's going to come once, not a series of bad events. It's more likely to come, not 10 sigma in the market, is vastly more likely than 2 times fund sigma. You see, and so fat tail. Now we understand that the ruin, you have to be a lot more paranoid, and thinking about it is not changing the color of the dress. Not saying, oh, we're going to apply it. It is fundamentally constructing portfolios differently and doing things differently. And for example, people don't quite get it when Ebola is from Extremistan. If I hear Ebola has killed maybe, at some point someone made a joke that more people transited, more American citizens transited through the bed of Kim Kardashian the year where we had Ebola than died of Ebola. So it didn't kill many people. But look, smoking, 450,000, sorry, it's US-centric. Alcohol, 86,000 people. We got to worry about these. No. Because if you go to Mars, or say you guys have like places in Canada that are very similar where you can contact. Okay, you go, spend 2 years, and on the way out, they tell you, well, the death toll on a planet was about 1 billion. What is it likely to come from? Smoking or Ebola? Conditional on a tail event, odds are it's going to come from that multiplicated process that can cause these things. That's the fat tail. This is why you have to worry about ruin coming from these things that are very fat-tailed. And financial markets are fat-tailed. So that's sort of like my, ideas 101. Now let me give you some counterintuitive things here. I have a few counterintuitive points until I feel people are getting sleepy, tired of these kind of intuitive points. We'll engage in conversation to, rewarm it. Go, okay, like that?
Okay, yeah, by all means, go ahead.
Your risk profile is not average. The consequence is that, very simply, not one person here, no matter how hard you try, with your own money or your fund's money, or your client's money or your grandmother's money, nobody here will get the returns of the market. Okay? Simple. You may get more, may get less, odds are less. Going forward. Let's see how. Why? Because, you see, how many Americans walk down the aisle thinking that this is permanent, so it's permanent status, and for them it turns out to not be permanent. Divorce, 50% rate. So, and I'm sure they're not like viciously getting married knowing they've got a divorce. Okay? So when you engage in a portfolio, you may want to get out. You may change your allocation. Something may happen. You may be forced to reduce your risk. Forced. Odds are you will be forced to reduce your risk. What happened then? Decouple from the market, which is why you can't get the market. But there's something even more vicious that we're going to talk about here, called past dependence. I don't know. The experiment has never been tried in Canada as a formal scientific experiment rigorously, but has been tried in other places, and let me report. If you wash your clothes first and iron them later, second, you get a different result than if you iron your clothes first and then wash them later. Do you agree with me that the sequence matters? So, taking this sequence, something quite trivial, if you want to get rich, to succeed, whatever you must first survive. It's not like survival come as another option. You see, it's not like and kind of separated, like have the risk management group on the 9th floor and the traders on the 12th floor. It's the same function. You must survive. And as a matter of fact, risk is just survival. I remember when I started trading, I had hair, you know, to tell you, it was a long time ago. An old trader called me after his board, and you get all kind of abuse by old traders who want to teach you life because they're bored, okay? And you have to listen because you're junior. But the fellow said something quite interesting that stayed with me. He said, take all the risks you can. Conditional on, he said, but make sure you're in tomorrow. So you have to separate ruin from regular speaking with completely different animals. And let's see how they're completely different animals. Let's say, and why, and another reason your return will never be those of the market. I seriously apologize for the crudity of this. It's in my book because I do it myself. And as you can see, I'm not gifted. I told you I can't do tennis, I can't draw. But I insisted on the publisher keeping it in a book rather than bring me some, illustrating. So let's do this thought experiment. We have enough people here. There is a new casino in Toronto. And we have no idea what the alpha from a casino is. No idea. We know it's steady, it's run by rigorous people, but we have no idea what the alpha is. Negative, positive, we have no idea. And sometimes, casinos give you positive alpha with the blackjack and stuff. More than that. So the whole room, say about 100 people or 100 people here because other people have something else to do. We go to the casino, each with an allowance, gamble for 8 hours, and come back and you tally everything. You sum up all the returns, divide by everything we started with, and you got the total, okay? Now, as you add 0 in an addition, does it have a big impact? No, it dilutes by 1/n the number of people, nothing. So, and if number 28, gambler, goes bust, or as we say in tapioca, all right, does number 29 care? No. Okay, you may even laugh at him, okay? So, simply people, this is called horizontal probability. Everything in finance is done that way. You compute cost-benefit analysis by summing up probabilities by options. But there's a flaw, and let's see how the flaw is. If any one of us here instead went to the casino for 100 days, not 100 people for 1 day, one person for 100 days, and started gambling, and on day 28, she or he went bust, tapioca, will there be day 29? No. So regardless of the alpha of the casino, once you hit ruin, you're gone. Now, this is not trivial, okay? Why is this not trivial? It changes the way you got to do everything. This, incidentally, is a cartoon about that topic by I hate the cartoonist, okay? I like the idea of him as a cartoonist. So who discovered that? This fellow on the right is Murray Gell-Mann, and the fellow on the left is Peters, both physicists, but Gell-Mann, you may know him, Nobel Prize in Physics. He's known to have a huge ego. I mean, I'm sure this room would be too small for Murray Gell-Mann, per se. Big ego. And he bullied Feynman. That kind of, he started the Santa Fe Institute. If you have an American genius, that'd be him. Okay, Murray Gell-Mann. Peter showed Gell-Mann the way we compute probabilities in decision science and finance. And Gell-Mann said, this is BS because of the concepts. He called it ergodicity, in the sense that you cannot take a static analysis and apply it dynamically, because dynamically your return, your average return, is multiplicated. So if you multiply by 0, from what I'm told, I'm sure it holds in Canada, although again, I mean, I haven't seen the evidence here. If you multiply something by 0, the total is 0, no? That typically holds in a lot of places, even France. If I add a 0, it doesn't change, okay? So, it dilutes the return. So when you're, in other words, if you're absorbed, if you have an alkyl point, you're gone. So focus, getting the average return is absolutely of no help to you, and the return of every investor are going to diverge over time. The average total will get the market, but I think something like only 10% should get above the market in this room. If you're invested in the market, okay? So this is very, very, very unsettling. Okay, if you had the problem is absorbing barriers matter. Some people understand it in some industries. They want 0 blow up, 0 probability of not surviving. Now I came from New York using one of those, and if the error rate is 0.1%, I don't know if there'd be many pilots alive, because over a 4-year career as a pilot can blow up. So, taking the average is significant. So and the way I phrased it is, when I was a trader, I said, crossing a river that is 3 feet deep on average, okay, isn't something you should consider, all right? So the point is, so if you have second order effect, risk was all right. Now, this is so trivial, every single trader knows it. And no academic that I know knows it. So it's like having 2 parallel universes, okay? Every trader knows it. Okay, if you have a tail risk, you're gonna go bust. Every individual, now Goldman Sachs, they've been in existence for 149 years. We sort of all hate them, but admire them. They may have had support by the US government the last 10 years, 9 years, maybe, but still you have 140 years. And these people do a lot of trading, and they have a lot of luck. It means that these people have survived to have close to 0 probability of going up. They got up and down. And effectively, every trader I know treats probability of absorption differently from alpha and return and all that stuff. Because it's something very simple. If I have a tiny probability of ruin, I would be ruined. And it's not like an option. Tiny over time, you lengthen the time. So the way people look at risk is wrong. And the way you gotta look at risk is, if you're gonna do this for the rest of your life, by how much is it gonna shorten your life expectancy? Okay, that's the way to do it, you see? Or what's your expected life expectancy if you do this? If you had infinite lives and you smoked, your life expectancy would be something like, on average, 60, all right? It would lengthen by 24 years, shorten by 24 years. So that is the problem that's not the literature. If I'm gonna take some tail risk, okay, how long can I do that before I'm caught, by the market? That's the way to do it. But you see, what I'm discovering, and I insist in my book, that grandmothers understand that. Our grandmothers know that. Risk professionals don't. The way they do their cost-benefit analysis is as if you're never going to take more risks in your life. But the problem is, if I play Russian roulette and succeed, what am I going to do? Play again. So it's not like I have 20% chance of dying if I play Russian roulette. I have 100% chance of dying on the repetition. If you succeed, you play again. It's the same with smoking. When you analyze smoking, any cigarette, no cigarette is going to kill you, okay? Not that I enjoy it, but I'll say, okay, so you take 1 cigarette, but show me someone who enjoyed 1 cigarette, and that was it for the rest, the remaining balance of his or her life. You see, you got to look at it. So when you engage in risky activity, whether a bank, an institution, or anything, or selling options, you don't have staying powers. At some point, it's going to catch up with you. So the problem, and now there are ways to play the game and avoid the ruin. Who discovered that? Someone knows here Kelly criterion? Kelly? Kelly at Thorpe, or the gamblers. I mean, we had a gambler here, a charming person, and all these people understand ruin. Just like traders understand ruin, those who do things with their hands for a living. So they, fellow just got the Nobel, Russian sailor, or Nobel, or pseudo Nobel, the Bank of Sweden prize and honor of Alfred Nobel, okay? But they call it Nobel, for showing us that it's irrational to do what you should be doing at a casino. And let me explain. When people who are smart, those who survive, engage in any form of risk-taking, they tend to play with the house's money. Okay? You play with it. Actually, there's even a theorem. There is a book, which was a doctoral thesis of a famous statistician, How to Gamble If You Must. And if you cannot imagine the abuse they got on Amazon by gamblers who thought it was a gambling book. But it tells you the following. The only way you can survive in gambling and not hit the barrier is to enter the casino, say you have $1,000 Canadian, okay, $1,000, you bet. If you make money, what do? You bet more. As you get close to your uncle point, you reduce your bets. And in fact, if you have the alpha, you can get your alpha that way and continue indefinitely. If there's a slight alpha in a casino, you will get it by shrinking on losses preemptively, not shrinking, smoothly shrinking, and adding as you're making money. So it's called playing with house money. Now, these behavioral finance people find it irrational. Why? Not because they've never been in a casino, that I'm sure, but they didn't think about it dynamically. They think it's irrational to take more risk with money if it's partly the casino's money than your own, your initial endowment. And to go back to a few points, they also find it very, very illogical to be paranoid. I mean, it is, okay, so do you like being paranoid?
Not terribly.
Sorry?
Not terribly, no.
Okay, nobody likes being paranoid. But let's think about it. If we as a human race weren't paranoid, then have these paranoia and conspiracies immediately springing, okay, even if they're wrong 99% of the time, where would we be now? Extinct. You'd have some nice trees here, and where we are in this building, you'd have all these environmental problems would disappear. We wouldn't exist as a race. We exist only because we're paranoid. Because if you analyze dynamically, you see, the payoff from paranoia is huge. Like with a cigarette. If you're paranoid about cigarette, I don't want to smoke once. It's irrational, the psychologists will tell you. You got to be paranoid. And how could be structurally paranoid? No tail risk, take all the stuff you want. People do that in their lives. I don't know if you know this. Show me a person who buys a house without insurance. Okay, show me a person. I mean, you in some places, you're allowed to do that. I don't know how paternalistic the Trudeaus are here to force you, whether they force you, but you typically have to, okay, so show me a person who, you're overpaying for the insurance. You're not overpaying for the insurance. You can't buy the house without the insurance because you can't afford that ruin and what comes out of it. So so that's the first point, I guess, and we can go from here. And so let me keep the paranoia on.
Let me ask you, just let me come back to the book because it's a fascinating read, and anybody that's engaged in taking risk is familiar with the surface notion of skin in the game. Could you talk a little bit about some of the unintended consequences of skin in the game and the way that it manifests itself?
Okay, that's by skin in the game, I mean thou shalt not transfer your risk to society, okay, while having the benefits in some disguised way, you see. But there's one aspect of skin in the game that's linked to this. A friend of mine, a former Goldman partner, retired, and unlike me, he didn't do math, so he decided to lose his money slowly in the restaurant business. So that's the way, you want to lose your money slowly but surely, that's the place to be. So he invested in these restaurants, and then he noticed that business is weird. First of all, if you ever attempted, there's ways to give money to charity and help a lot of people rather than open a restaurant. But he noticed one thing. There are awards in that business. So awards, the best atmosphere with sushi, the best atmosphere without sushi, that kind of awards, and all kind of specialties. Then there's a gala. The restaurant that got the awards didn't make it to the gala. Why? Well, because who gives the awards? It's not the clients. You want to impress your clients, not your peers. It's other restaurant owners. So areas that have expertise are defined very simply by people have skin in the game, in the sense that a plumber, his P&L, is not determined by what other plumbers think of him. Okay? He doesn't care about impressing other plumbers. He wants to impress his accountant. He survived. And also, there's no BS in this. But academics, who judges academics?
Other academics.
Other academics. So therefore, you can have, as we have in financial economics and economics, macroeconomics, people completely out of sync with reality. And we'll never know, because there's no. But a pilot of a plane, all these people, they're in sync with reality, because those who are not, guess what? Where are they? Pilots who are not in sync with reality, where are they? At the bottom of, near, somewhere north of Vancouver in the middle of the ocean? That's okay. So that's what, so they are a field. So this is the idea of skin in the game, is that any knowledge we got about anything that doesn't come from professionals who have survived is, by definition, tainted. It will have a flaw somewhere, and you got to find that flaw. That's my idea of skin in the game. Of course, you have ethics. Don't transfer your risks. If you own your own risks, you see, you have skin in the game. You will survive if you're right. If you're not right, you exit the pool, and there will be no side effect of that. That's the idea of skin in the game.
So coming back, you talk in the book about this concept of the rule of the minority, and the fact that the minorities impose a cost on the majorities. So maybe if you could just outline the concept and perhaps comment on where in the financial world the minority imposes a massive cost on the majority.
Okay, so my book is about two effects. One when you put dynamics, the other one when you put scale. So scale, in other words, if I know how each one of you behaves, and I add up everyone, guess what? It doesn't help me predict how the ensemble will and how did I discover that? I was trying to define complex systems at a party at the Complex System Institute. And a few people from Jerusalem came, and they were religious. And I felt embarrassed because I was co-organizer, and we didn't have kosher drinks. I didn't think about it. I thought, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were coming, and so on. Yeah, relax. What? All drinks here are kosher. What? Yeah, look at this at the bottom. Huh? Okay. So, like, Monsieur Jourdan, I've been speaking prose all these years. I've been drinking kosher drinks without knowing. Why? 0.3% of the U.S. population is kosher. But let's say you're Coca-Cola or a manufacturer. What do you want to do? Have a kosher truck, kosher this, kosher that, and then have an aisle and have shipments? What do? You make them all kosher. If the cost is small, so someone coming from Mars and studying the food habits of the U.S. population would be mistaken from the food habits to believe that, or from the drinking habit, that the majority is kosher. In fact, 0.3%. Okay, so That is, almost all drinks are kosher. Okay, so I started looking into the and right there at the complex, and it's a complexity subject in the sense that how a collective behave differently from the individuals, part of that collective. So started studying how you can have a situation like that. I was on American Airlines, no peanuts. Why? All you need is one person on the plane to be allergic to peanuts for no peanuts. So you realize that minorities are effectively driving our habits. And then I looked at marketing. People don't quite understand the habits of consumers. Automatic cars. You think that people would have a preference for automatic cars. That's what we sell. No. Stick shift is what people preferred at a time when they still, had them. But if you're a family of 4 and one person doesn't drive stick shift, guess what? The whole family will have an automatic. So you have these things. Now go into markets, start examining situation in markets where the collective is different from individuals. One of them, for the minority rule, I realized, and a very simple experiment, the day when Société Générale had 9 years ago, they had a rogue trader. Okay, they sold $50 billion of stocks very quickly. It was an unconditional sale. A minority rule means someone who unconditionally will only drink kosher, someone who will not, whereas the rest of us don't mind doing both. Kosher or non-kosher, no difference for me, you see? Or at least small difference, but bigger for him or her who's in a minority. So I know that someone wants to sell 50 billion. Okay, what happens? We have the market is, what is it now, 30 trillion? What is it?
It's more than that.
Sorry?
More than that.
50 trillion?
70.
No, just the stock markets.
Yeah, it's 70 trillion.
Okay, so drove markets lower at a time. That was a time of 30 trillion. In 2009, drove markets lower by 12% on that minority, you see. So you realize there's always someone willing to pay up or someone willing to sell down, and an auction that will determine prices, not the collective. So from that, the minority rule can be very, very dangerous, because if you tell them, those who play the minority rule in politics, all you have to do is be intolerant, and 98% of this population will submit to you. So, but also it works for ethics. If you are a thief, you don't mind eating non-stolen merchandise, I mean, I've never been a thief, or I won't say it. But a honest person will refuse. So all you need is a minority of honest people for society to be honest. So start looking at minority rule and notice that whenever something is stable across society, it cannot be a majority rule. By definition, majorities fluctuate. It got to be a very potent minority rule. Whether in politics, whether in human rights, you think with Saudi Arabia now, what happened in Saudi Arabia, do you think it's because the majority of people don't want to do something? No, all you need is a minority of people who are intolerant and willing to shame others and say, I will not do business with you. I will not hire you as an actor. I will not play tennis with you if you, help Saudi Arabia. And suddenly you have a spiral on there.
So one of the other concepts you talked in the book, which I thought was intriguing, was the notion that the affluent are typically easier to exploit than the non-affluent. How does that reconcile with the fact that, I mean, look, everybody in the room is sort of at or near the 0.1%, and these are typically savvy individuals that have built businesses. How does the fact that they're affluent are easier to exploit reconcile with that?
I mean, and that was Seneca who said that basically that if you're much more likely to be a turkey of someone, because more people will try to take your money if you're rich than if you're poor. Okay, and the examples I give are mostly from my private life. Is a few times, I mean, I like a good meal, a good traditional Italian meal, a reasonable price. And sometimes you drag them to these torture sessions in some three-star Michelin, or you have to eat microscopic food, and you have to concentrate. So I told myself, listen, would I pay $300 for the pizza, a good fresh pizza with fresh basil and fresh herbs? If I had to choose between this meal for $7.95 or the pizza for $300, I think I would pay $300 for a pizza rather than these complicated meals. So I realized often when you're rich, you become target of people who want to change your lifestyle so they can make more money off of you. And some people are vulnerable enough to fall into to do things because they think that's what they should be doing because they're rich. In fact, that's not optimal for them. Just like large houses. People are sad in large houses because large houses are empty, devoid of human warmth. So a small little thing like that in a book. But that was a side chapter. That was that was the goal is only. I mean, if you're engaged, want to rip people off, the best way to do it is go to the rich.
Mm-hmm.
So the rich is much more exposed to being ripped off than the poor.
So let me close off our conversation with one last question. You have, again, this is an investor conference. Everybody in the room, to some extent, is involved in investing. What recommendations would you have, or what would be your top recommendation for investors that want to utilize the lessons of skin in the game and anti-fragility and some of the other notions that you've spoken about in some of your past books?
Simple rule. First, decide, instead of investing in medium risk securities, if you invest in medium risk security, can your portfolio go to zero? It can. But if you invest half of it in very high risk securities and the other half in close to no risk securities, can your portfolio drop by more than half? No. So the whole idea is try to switch your risk preferences around with the same risk preference, switch your allocation around to have a part that you'll never lose and a part that you lose. So in other words, buying protection on a portfolio, okay, allows you to be much more risky, to take much larger risks toward the portion because you don't have ruin. So, which is what I call the barbell. So that's one, it's everything falls from the same idea that you want to avoid ruin. And if you avoid ruin, and guess what, and other people did not avoid ruin, that's where the money is made. Because if you can buy in 2008, 2009, and other people are, trying to watch TV or something because to distract themselves from the pain of opening their statement, which at the time was still in paper, then you have a huge edge. So that optionality comes from having extra cash for the crash or something like that. For example, people think that cash is no asset. In fact, it's a very valuable asset if you know how to work with it. So take a lot of risks, very diversified, in other words, high risk items coupled with no risk items. The payoff is much more rational because you never hit ruin, for example. The other one is make sure you play with the house's money. Okay. The other one is make sure to never encounter an uncle point. An uncle point being in the army, or when you have to say, I'm out, okay? If you never want to have to liquidate, you want to do the reverse. You want to have enough of reserve to not have to liquidate and to watch other people liquidate. Small little things like that.
Yeah. Well, Nassim, thank you. Thank you for coming all this way to share your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.